Ashes of surrender. For generations, the galaxy had known only the Dominion. The Zorvith Empire, cold, mechanical, and merciless, had ground entire civilizations beneath its boots. Species once proud and noble now dug minerals from the bones of their own ruined worlds. In the Dominion's eyes, the ideal citizen was one who did not speak, only obeyed. Resistance wasn't crushed, it was erased. On Varney's 9, a mining world far from the Dominion's core, the air tasted of ash and metal. The sky always hung heavy with storm clouds, seeded by orbital pollution. Slaves toiled in the belly of the planet, extracting curium crystals, the volatile fuel that kept Zorvith war engines alive. And beneath the endless labor and pain, something deeper had died. Hope. Among the miners was Keth'ari, once a scholar from the aquatic world of Trelmar. Now, like everyone else, he wore the ragged gray uniform of the enslaved. His webbed hands, once trained to turn pages and teach philosophy, now bled on pickaxes and plasma drills. His people had been conquered a century ago, their libraries incinerated, their oceans polluted to force them onto land. Keth'ari had not spoken a word of resistance in years. Not until today. "Why do you keep humming that melody?" whispered a fellow miner beside him. It was a soft tune, ancient and forgotten, a lullaby from the Trelmar deep. Keth'ari looked up, startled. "It helps me remember that we were once more than this." The other worker flinched and glanced at the overhead surveillance drone. Speech outside of command was banned. The drone hovered for a moment, then drifted on. "You'll get yourself killed," the miner hissed. "Maybe," Keth'ari replied. "But if we all die silent, what's the difference?" That afternoon, Keth'ari was flagged for behavioral instability. He was scheduled for re-education, a euphemism for brain shredding. Far above the planet, aboard the Zorvith command station Vraxis Prime, Admiral Grelthor reviewed reports from subjugated sectors. His gnarled, bark-like hands clicked over a touch interface. Slave productivity on Varney's 9 was dipping again. "Send an enforcement squad," he growled. "Make examples." But his command was interrupted. Unregistered warp signature entering Varney's airspace. He leaned forward. "Show me." On the screen, rippling from FTL travel, emerged a small fleet. Sleek, angled vessels unlike anything in the Dominion archives. Painted a deep matte black with blue underglow, their signature was unmistakable. Human. "Impossible," Grelthor muttered. Earth was quarantined. Their fleet never left Sol. But there they were. The humans had arrived. On the bridge of the Earth vessel Vindicator, Commander Rhea Salas stood motionless, hands clasped behind her back, eyes on the tactical display. Dozens of red Zorvith markers blinked angrily. "Incoming hails," said her comms officer. "Standard threats. They want us to retreat." Rhea smirked. "They'll learn soon we don't take kindly to bullies. Deploy recon drones. Non-lethal until provoked." The bridge lit up with quiet activity. "Should we broadcast?" asked Lieutenant Isaac Brand. Rhea nodded. "Open a channel to the planet and all orbital stations." Seconds later, Keth'ari, being marched toward the black doors of re-education, heard something he'd never expected in his life. A voice, in perfect galactic standard, reverberated through every speaker, every headset, every neurocom implant on Varney's 9. "This is Commander Rhea Salas of Earth's 5th Reconnaissance Fleet. We have come not to conquer, but to challenge the tyrants who do. To the Zorvith, we suggest you leave. To the enslaved, you are not alone." Keth'ari stopped walking. Even the guards froze. For a breathless moment, the entire planet paused. Then, the sky cracked with thunder and fire. The Dominion's fighters launched instantly. Swift and brutal, they swarmed toward the Earth fleet. But they weren't ready. The Vindicator and its escorts released flocks of autonomous drone pods, tiny AI-guided units armed with EMP nets and plasma scatterbombs. They didn't aim to destroy Zorvith ships, just disarm them. Engines fried, weapons offline, pilots drifted helplessly. Down below, workers and guards looked up as streaks of silver flashed across the sky. And in one mining district, A squad of Earthshock troops landed amid dust and flame. They didn't come with flags or speeches. They came with shields, medpacks, and stun rifles. They hit the Zorvith guards fast, neutralizing, not killing. They pulled prisoners from cages, shut down control towers, and rescued instead of dominating. Keth'ari watched a human soldier pull a slave child from a rubble heap and hand her water. He thought he might be dreaming. The rescue team stormed the re-education chamber next. 2 guard behind the door. Non-lethal gas, Brand ordered. Seconds later, the doors burst open and Keth'ari collapsed to the ground coughing, blinking through the haze, looking up into human faces. A hand reached down. Keth'ari, he nodded slowly. I'm Lieutenant Isaac Brand. You're coming with us. Hours later, aboard the Vindicator, Keth'ari sat in a medical chamber, bandages on his wrists, listening as humans debated the next move. We need to disable the orbital comm relay, Isaac was saying. They'll signal the core fleets if we don't. We'll have full rebellion on our hands, another officer said. The Dominion will retaliate planet-wide. Rhea stood between them. That's the point, she said. Keth'ari cleared his throat. You don't understand. You can't win. They'll send fleets. Burn entire sectors. It's what they do. Rhea turned to him. Then we teach them that this time, the fire spreads both ways. Back on Vraxis Prime, Admiral Grelthor watched in fury as reports streamed in. Half of Varney's IX's surface sectors were no longer responding. His jaw clenched. Send the Purge fleet. I want that world turned to glass. Before his officers could obey, something unexpected happened. The Dominion's own transmission systems were hijacked. Rhea Salas appeared on every Zorvith screen in the sector. You rule through fear. We respond with unity. You crush spirits. We ignite them. You want obedience? You'll get defiance. This world is not yours anymore. On the ground, the slave camps erupted. Some ran, some hid, but many picked up stolen blasters, wielded makeshift spears, or just raised fists and voices. Not out of certainty, but because someone finally had lit the match. Keth'ari, no longer bound or silent, stood on the edge of the colony's spire as dawn began to break. The sky was still scarred by battle, but the flags of the Dominion no longer flew. He breathed in, and for the first time in his life, the air didn't taste like surrender. It tasted like resistance, the spark of defiance. The dawn after Varney's IX's liberation did not bring silence. It brought fire, electricity, and breathless urgency. Across its continents, former slaves whispered, shouted, and sometimes screamed a word few dared to speak aloud in decades. Freedom. But freedom wasn't safe. Not yet. On board the Vindicator, the Earth Fleet's flagship, Commander Rhea Salas stood before a hastily assembled council of alien leaders, if one could call them that. Most had never led anything more than a labor unit. They were miners, diggers, and former scholars like Keth'ari, who now sat near the back, a datapad in hand. In the middle of the chamber, a hologram of the Zorvith sector fleet movements pulsed ominously. We've intercepted encoded chatter, said Lieutenant Isaac Brand. A full retaliation fleet is en route from Sector Talvith. Estimated time of arrival, 32 hours. The gathered aliens shivered, even those with armored scales. Rhea's voice was calm. We have that long to turn this planet into a message. The plan? Rhea didn't intend to hold Varney's 9 as a military outpost. She intended it to become a beacon. Human engineers immediately began working with alien volunteers to retrofit Dominion equipment. Old mining transmitters were refocused into wideband comm relays. The plan was to blast one message, not just to the fleet approaching, but to any subjugated species within range. Keth'ari oversaw the translations. He spoke 5 major galactic languages fluently. For the first time in years, he used them not to beg, but to inspire. Tirna Vess, a soft-spoken, amphibian pacifist who had once cataloged Dominion propaganda, volunteered to record the message. Her voice, while gentle, had a truth to it that shook listeners. You've been told resistance is death. They were right. But so is obedience. Death for something is better than living for nothing. The humans taught us that. Spreading the spark. With Varney's 9 lit, humans and their new allies launched stealth drone relays to other Zorvith-controlled worlds. The relays would transmit the message of defiance, encrypted but undeniable. Small uprisings followed almost immediately. On the swamp planet Jurlin, miners refused to report to tunnels. On Cyrith Prime, a research colony disabled its slave-tracking implants with repurposed Earth tech. The Zorvith tried to contain the flames, but they spread faster than fear. For every fire they extinguished, 2 more sparked, preparing for retaliation. But freedom always comes at a cost. On Varney's 9, the Earth fleet worked around the clock to strengthen orbital defenses. They couldn't match the Dominion in numbers, but they didn't have to. They just needed to survive long enough to make the cost of crushing this rebellion too high. Rhea convened a strategy council. Grelthor expects a frightened world, not a unified one, she explained. Let's show him we learned from the best. They deployed deception fields, buried mobile missile launchers in abandoned mines, and trained alien volunteers in guerrilla tactics. No one called themselves soldiers. They called themselves defenders. The first strike, the Zorvith fleet arrived on time. 30 heavy war cruisers and countless support ships. Their commander, Admiral Grelthor, transmitted a single message. Surrender the humans. Purge the rest. Rhea responded with a simple command. Activate Protocol Phoenix. The atmosphere shimmered as defensive satellites powered up. Holographic illusions of false fleet positions scrambled enemy sensors. EMP-laced mines triggered as the first Zorvith destroyers descended into the upper thermosphere. Grelthor hesitated. This wasn't the broken slave world he'd expected. This was a trap. The ground war begins. While the orbital battle raged, Zorvith drop troops landed across Varney's 9. But this time, the helpless workers fought back. Kvaran led a group through the underground tunnels, guiding them to ambush points and choke points only locals knew. Tirnav Ves, once a chronicler of defeat, now distributed repurposed Dominion maps and rationed human gear to resistance cells. Every mine shaft became a sniper's nest. Every processing plant was turned into a demolition target. In one skirmish, a young alien child ran through plasma fire to deliver a backup data core to an outpost. She didn't even have a name, just a number, Unit 947. But in that moment, she was legend. The turning point. Above the planet, the Vindicator faced 3 Dominion cruisers simultaneously. Rhea's ship took damage. Its rear thrusters compromised, but managed to detonate a controlled superflare from a Curium storage depot, blinding enemy sensors. Isaac Brand led a desperate boarding mission aboard the Dominion's flagship, disabling its targeting systems with a virus coded in 20 human languages to confuse translation-based AI. When Grelthor finally realized he could not win the battle cleanly, he ordered a planetary purge protocol. Varney's 9 will be turned to molten glass, unless someone stopped him. The speech that changed a galaxy. In those final minutes, Rhea Salas broadcast one last message, not just to the Dominion fleet, but through the entire galactic comnet. To the Zorvith, you may burn this planet. You may kill us, but you have already lost. Because the moment we lit this fire, your grip cracked. You rule with silence. We've given the galaxy a voice. You rule through terror. We've taught them courage. And you rule alone. We do not. Her message was picked up in 16 sectors within hours. The purge protocol stalled. Zorvith captains, some of whom had been raised in conquered systems, refused to fire. Grelthor found himself commanding a fleet that no longer listened. And then, in a moment that would be studied in galactic history for centuries to come, 3 Zorvith ships defected. They turned on their own. The battle was over. Not because humanity had the strongest fleet, but because they had lit a stronger will. Aftermath. In the days that followed, Varney's 9 became a symbol, a shrine, a rallying cry. The Coalition of the Willing was born, a union of species who chose resistance, formed not under Earth's flag, but beside it. Human engineers trained alien scientists, Former slaves became diplomats. Children who had never known anything but servitude began learning Earth history, not to worship it, but to understand the mindset that refused to kneel. Keth'ari became the first non-human ambassador to Earth. He delivered a speech at the United Terran Council. "You did not give us weapons. You gave us belief." Epilogue. In the distant stars, the Dominion still held territory. Its core worlds remained powerful, but they were no longer feared like gods. They were now feared like aging tyrants, overdue for rebellion. And across the galaxy, wherever voices once trembled, they now roared. It began on one ash-covered world, in the shadow of old minds and broken dreams. On that day, humanity didn't conquer the galaxy. They taught it to resist.